Ready? Calling the Snoqualmie Valley School District Board of Directors meeting to order. Today is August the 13th, 2026. We have three board members present, Director Milstein and Director Price and myself, and Director Fancer and Director Johnson are unable to join. Would you join me in Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, moving on to agenda item number 1.02. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any opposed? Sorry. None? Okay. Motion passes. Item number 1.03, approval of the minutes of July 9th, 2026 regular board meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next item is approval of the minutes of the meeting July 28th, 2026 special board meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion passes. Next item is approval of the minutes of the August 3rd, 2026 board work session. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to the next item is communication and recognition.
Thank you. Just as a reminder, we start every meeting with our Snoqualmie Valley School District vision statement, which is to cultivate confident, creative, and compassionate students who are fully equipped with necessary skills, knowledge, and resilience to thrive in a global society, with the mission of educating every student in a challenging, innovative, and inclusive environment, empowering them to reach their full potential. We have one piece of recognition. It's actually for September 8th, but we don't have a board meeting till following that date. September 8th is School Physical Therapist Day. So we definitely appreciate what they do to support our students throughout our school district. Last piece for me today is just like to thank our administrators and district office staff for the last couple of weeks. They're back at it and working together and have taken this on full board and ready to get another school year started. So I thank them for that focus after a summer, or a July at least, of some downtime. So thanks for all their work. And that's it.
All right. Moving on to the next item is a public hearing on our 2026-2027 fiscal year budget. Mr. Stokes.
Good evening. Tonight we'll have some update. Most of what you will see we reviewed at the last board meeting. Most of the changes were some additional review of expenditures, and then we had some revenues that we updated since the last board meeting. Things like interest earnings on our fund balance and donations and grants. And so that's why you'll see that our draw on fund balance projected in this budget has gotten better than what you saw at the last board meeting in July. So it's anticipating an $800,000 draw on fund balance. I think we reviewed it at 1.4, and so we've tightened that up a little bit. So that went in the right direction. We're happy to see that. This is a summary of the budgets, the 5 funds that we separately account for, and we'll go through each of those in a little bit more detail, and I'll probably be brief in this since most of this is what you saw in July. So we are projecting a decrease in enrollment. Continuing in the elementary level as we're seeing smaller kindergarten cohorts coming into the system, and that will start flowing through middle and high school, and I'll show you a little bit more how that works. Our kindergarten enrollment is looking decent with what we have budgeted, and we had two more buildings where they had quite a number of late enrollments this last week, and that was putting their class sizes higher, and so we've authorized hiring in that area to reduce the class size. So as far as a budget is concerned, it looks like our kindergarten enrollment will come in above budget, and that's one of the reasons why we have capacity in the budget is they come, we hire 2 new teachers, and we have expenditure capacity in the budget to do that instead of needing to come and do a budget revision and go through that process every time. So that's one of the reasons why we have capacity, and we'll talk about that, but it's really to give us flexibility to continue to operate, and we would only spend it if we have the corresponding revenues to address it in most cases. Our class size is projected to be similar to prior years, and some of that is just dependent upon, as we talked about in July, each elementary comes in different packages, and so kind of the mix and how that works out changes. That becomes harder as our elementary schools become smaller because the number of students in each grade level is smaller, and so your law of averages gets more out of whack, and so you will have some larger class sizes in some grade levels and smaller in others. And then because our levy supported the addition of art in all of our elementary schools, we do anticipate that our demonstrated class size will probably be smaller next year than it was this year. It's a good thing, and as we showed in July, there are a number of neighboring school districts that are not even at the state maximum or minimum. They fund at 17-1. We're at 15.5, and you see that some neighboring districts are above that. Some of that is probably fiscal related, and others I'm not sure. I haven't asked them, but I think that's a great thing. We're investing a lot of funds and staffing in our elementary, and so we anticipate that we will continue to see good results from that additional support. On a staffing summary, there is a slight increase in our staffing, and this, again, as a note, if you're reconciling this to the documents, our documents have capacity positions in them, and so I've taken those out to try to make it more apples to apples. On the staffing side, the certificated increase, we have some increase related to the art teachers additions. We've had in the last 2 years some additions on the elementary side as far as deans of students. And some of that is, again, based on enrollment and where students land and what the needs are. So there is some general increase there. On the classified, it's a kind of a mix. You saw that it was not really an increase from last year, kind of the same. Our ELC schedule changed, and so the amount of paraeducators needed for that has reduced, but we're seeing increases elsewhere. We're being successful in bringing in bus drivers, and then we have para needs in other areas and other buildings. We talked about this in July, but the implicit price deflator is the inflationary factor that the state uses to increase their funding levels. And we all know that that's a very low and conservative estimate of inflation, which makes it a challenge when we budget because our expenditures will naturally be higher than what the state funds. We have to try to keep up with that by going to our local voters through our EP&O levy. We also tend to have historically passed this IPD on to all of our staff members. And because not all of our staff members are state funded or they are compensated more than what the state funds, that means our local levy takes on some of that. So for every 1%, it's about $300,000 of local levy dollars. So this year our IPD is 2.6, so we needed another $800,000 in our levy just to pass on what the state says is a cost of living increase.
Is that a required or
Is not.
consistently? Yeah.
It's not required, it has been our practice. And so that when districts get into trouble financially, they tend to stop doing that.
Right.
There are districts that take whatever the state funding is and they spread that amongst the staff. We have not done that, but it's just good for us to know. The next 2 years are projected to still have inflation. That's one of the reasons why our EP&O levy needed to increase, because in order to kind of do what we think is right for our staff, it requires more local funding. So it's just something helpful for you to know and a talking point for you to know that not even IPD is fully funded by the state, is a good way to look at that. There's a few things that we have to, in this presentation, show as a state requirement. One of them is the staffing compliance for physical, social, and emotional support. This is counselors, nurses, psychologists, those types of positions. The state over the last few years has increased their staffing formula for those positions and wanted to make sure the legislatures are afraid that we would somehow take that money and hire different people. And so we have to show that we are staffing well above what the state funds in that. You'll notice at the high, there's a negative on the high, and that's really because in the past, we've coded a number of our counselors against CTE funds. We've changed that for this budget cycle. We've reduced that. We've flipped it with an assistant principal. So next year when I show you this, we anticipate them to all be in the positive, but that our compliance is based on total. So we're 9 staff above what the state funds in this area. Going into the general fund revenues, again, you've seen this before.
Just a quick comment on the staffing I wanted to highlight is the admin budget has decreased.
Yeah,
That is to basically show that we are optimizing. I just want to, congratulate or appreciate that, because we are optimizing the administrative functions and focusing more on the student learning and support.
yeah, that's a good point. Way to do your homework, Ram. Good job. On the revenue side, no change really here from what we saw in July. So I'll just keep moving on there. And on the state funding, again, it's IPD of 2.6, a decrease in our general ed enrollment. And as I mentioned in July, our special ed enrollment increased substantially over last year. Gary had asked what that looks like, and so this is our enrollment report. So you'll see that at the beginning of the year, in ages 3 through 5, we started at 64 and ended in 80. This would be something we would anticipate, especially with the ELC opening. We had a little bit more visibility, room to hold folks, and great child find exercises to bring students in that would be qualifying. On the K through 22 side, you see that we started at 808 and ended in 869. So that's a pretty big increase, 60 students over the year qualifying for services. And so that you will see in our year-end results that special ed costs have gone up, and this is in part because the students qualifying have also gone up quite significantly. And then we've incorporated that into this upcoming year, anticipating that the students who qualified during the year will still be with us next year. So you'll see on the expenditure side and on the revenue side quite an increase in our special education expenditures and revenues. Again here, not a ton has changed since July. Some of the grants and donations, as we refined that, has changed from July, but not a significant change there. The community services, again, revenues and expenditures changed. As we looked at our daycare is a service that we provide to our staff to provide an affordable and available spot for students to come so they can come back to work. We also think it should be close to cost neutral, or as close to cost neutral as possible. So we took a look at that this last year and increased tuitions to try to make that more cost neutral so that it's not subsidized by local taxpayers. And so that's one of the reasons why you see some increase there. And again, it's both on the revenue and expenditure side. Another way to look at the budget is based on the types of expenditures. So this is salaries, benefits, and then supplies and purchase services. Purchase services is kind of a unique, terminology that the state uses, but that includes insurance and utilities as well as purchase services, what you'd think with purchase services. Our out-of-district placements is a purchased service where we're paying another school to provide services. So purchase services is a pretty broad, and I think it's important to just make sure that people know that includes things like utilities and insurance that you might think would be a materials supply and other cost, not a purchase service.
The paraeducators are also purchase service, or?
The paraeducators would be in classified salaries unless we're hiring them through a staffing agency, which we did during COVID area when we were having a hard time finding certain folks. It wasn't really paras, it was occupational therapists and things like that.
But the one-on-one, like where we have behavior specialists, are they here?
If they're our employee, they would be classified staff. If we are hiring through bands or some of the other staffing agencies, that would be purchase service. And that's one of the reasons why on this one you see the purchase services going up, because some of the special education costs are purchase services. In general, though, you see the percentages are fairly consistent, which is what we would expect. So that's that. We talked about this in July as well. The average salary per FTE, IPD is 2.6, and then there's things like staff mix where we aren't hiring as many people, and so our staff mix is tending to get older and more education and more years of service, and so they get higher on the salary schedule, so that average salary goes up as well. And we have incorporated the tentative agreement of SVA. What we think that will cost is also in this budget. This is another requirement of the legislature to make sure that when they increase funding, we don't spend it somewhere else. In the MSOCs, the state funds 10 million, we spend 17. So yay, we're not like diverting it to some other nefarious intent. So we'll continue to ask the legislature to fund some of these things that they have woefully underfunded, but this is a requirement for us to show you.
I will throw in, as much as I appreciate the recognition that we're going to put it where it needs to go, and MSOC is already underfunded, right? So yes,
Yeah.
accountability is great. I hear what you're saying, and at the same time, when it is tracked and it's still not enough, then that's a key we can use to
Sure.
increase it. So
Yeah,
thank you for
I don't mind
being-
tracking it. I get cynical on it when they give us a little bit and say, but we don't want you to spend it somewhere else. So now we're going to create a bunch of reports
I know.
so that like you're not diverting the money to something else. And it's like, well, this isn't really the protection that, anyway, we're getting on philosophical.
I just
It's not really the way to
for
protect
record,
it, but it's
that does
just kinda-
make it easier to say no, but still.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you.
So Ryan, is this consistent statewide?
I'm guessing yes. I haven't really looked because
I'm guessing that it's probably
Yeah.
true. And that
MSOCs, MSOCs have been
the one or the
One of
Probably
big
the-
three for
the one that has lagged the most is the MSOC piece, right? And partly because of their inflationary factor, and inflation has outpaced what they have used for their funding, and so it has accelerated drastically. So, yeah.
that should reduce the amount of reporting, because historically,
Yeah.
that will reduce the state budget for, operation of the budget,
Yeah.
reporting and verifying and
It
things like
checks the box, and if we were a district that were getting extra MSOCs and didn't need it for MSOCs, we'd be in a good spot. I mean, like if that's where you're worried about the money getting diverted from, like it's a different environment. On the other funds, we did this in July, no changes there. ASB is our student bodies, and they approve their budgets. We review it to make sure it looks okay. Debt service is the principal and interest on our outstanding debt, which were bonds sold to build things like the high school and Timber Ridge. So that's just a standard. We know what it is. We put some allocation in there because there are some bonds that might be able to be refinanced or refunded in this year, and so there's some cost to that. And so we put budget capacity in there so that we don't have to do a budget revision if we decide to go that route. Capital projects is go ahead, Ram.
So the debt service has a fund balance?
Yes.
Okay.
Some of that is because the timing of your debt service payments, you pay a lot of that in December, and so you need a fund balance in September in order to be able to pay that. And then agencies and your credit agencies like to show that you can definitely make your payments and not worry about like it being dependent on. So we monitor the fund balance, and there's some art to how much should we grow it or shrink it. You can shrink it a little bit, and it saves a penny on the tax rate or something. And so we kind of work that through the system, but it's mostly, you can see here there we're projecting an addition to the fund balance of $360,000, but it's really to cover that principal and interest. And some of this also is you're projecting that most of the folks are going to pay their tax bill. That's the other reason to have a fund balance, is as the economy gets tougher and people start becoming delinquent on their tax bills, you still have to make your payments. And so we also maintain a fund balance for that.
Okay.
Capital projects is similar. I've built in a lot of capacity in the budget so that we have flexibility to do things. Most of our capital projects expenditures are larger expenditures that would come to the board per our policy of anything over $100,000. And so this is really an aggressive capacity piece so that we can finish some of the projects we've got going. If we want to do some safety improvements from the bond with that leftover money, we could start doing that. We've got the committee looking on our long-range facilities plan, and if that generates some work or we decide to start doing some design work for a school on that, I've got just capacity in there. I don't, if you were to put my, I would not say that we're going to be spending all this next year, but this is just capacity. Transportation vehicle is similar. We want to replace buses as soon as they come off depreciation so that we can keep them a newer fleet and continue to get the depreciation from the state. And so this is a capacity position. Given how slow the bus manufacturers are at delivering the buses, it's unlikely that we would be able to get all of these delivered in time, but we want to have the budget capacity to be able to replace them if we can. We'll probably have, we found, I think we've got 2 buses that are available for purchase that don't have to be manufactured that we'll be providing to you next board meeting for
How
approval.
much is a bus?
$250,000 for a large bus.
And how long does it take to manufacture one?
It used to be like 4 to 6 months, and then during and after COVID, it became 12 to 18 months. Yeah, lots of fun.
That's the lead time for.
Yeah,
If you
yeah.
order and then.
Yeah. I think it's gotten better. Coming out of COVID, it was like 18 months. It was really, really slow. So.
Right, and there's a question, when you talked about the ELC and the reduction of the para there because of the change in the schedule,
Yes.
and maybe Kim can help too, why did that result in a reduction?
Yeah, so our extended care, which was for before and after school care, last year we did with our own staff, and this year we're partnering with North Bend Skyview to provide that service, but not have it be, it became it's very challenging from a staffing perspective when we have a program that is 10 or 11 hours long. And so it was really hard to keep all of those classes staffed appropriately because we wouldn't hire someone for an 11-hour shift. So you have a lot of the partial shifts to kind of fill in, a lot of movement in and out because it's not full work. And so we decided to shift away from that. We're still providing the opportunity for that service, but trying to not have it be something that we have to manage.
Sorry. Go ahead. Is it still located at the ELC?
Yeah,
So Skyview people are coming in and taking care of the kids?
after school. Oh.
Okay.
Good to know.
Then no more questions right now.
Never mind. Thank you.
Okay, well, good thing we have capacity in the budget if we
I
have
was
to
gonna
pivot.
say, good
why
thing
we
we
do
can
that.
pivot
why we
because
do
we
that.
have room.
So what I've highlighted in green is what the board will see in the action item later on in the agenda. What the board approves is really just the appropriations. You're giving us the capacity to spend up to that amount. If we go over that amount, we would have to do a budget revision. And so, again, we've tried to show you all the details so that you know where it's going, but your action would actually be just for the appropriation available in those funds. The other thing that we have to do is a 4-year projection, which again, I get a little cynical because the government, the state is a 2-year budget cycle, but we have to somehow project 4 years. And because that is challenging, I use a very simplistic assumption approach to it. So take that with a grain of salt. We're trying to show what we think it's going to be, and we acknowledge that things change every year, and so that 4-year outlook will probably look differently. On the assumptions for enrollment, and if you look at kindergarten for our budget, it's 420. I had said earlier in the slide that we budgeted 430. That's because 10 of those are alternative learning environments for our Meadowbrook program. And so this is just general ed enrollment. So the assumption that I made is that our kindergarten will slowly grow over the 4 years and that we will more than retain all of our students as they advance through the system. So I assumed that each year the first graders would become a little bit bigger as second graders the next year. That isn't really what we have typically seen, but it's close. So I'd say this is moderately liberal on what we think the growth rate will be. What's interesting is as you do that exercise, the total enrollment actually declines, as you can see. So that is something to account for in our budgets. What that looks like at our school level bands over that 4-year cycle, you see that most of that impact is still hitting at the elementary. You see the reduction of about 100 students every year in that cycle. And that's, again, because a kindergarten class is coming in at a lower level than the outgoing 5th grade class. And so really, it takes 5 or 6 years of that to flow through the elementary school to start hitting your middle school. So you see that starting to hit in 28 at the middle school level, and then a couple years after that, you'll see some of that hitting at the high school level. So that's kind of what I assumed there. And as we know, adjusting to staffing, another assumption that I've made is as our enrollment goes down, we adjust our staffing by a similar percentage. And as we know, that's hard to really do because they don't come in all the neat little packaging and in the right numbers. And so luckily, I don't have to say this is where we're making the reductions. I just make a general reduction of expenditures to offset the loss of enrollment revenues. But it's something that we will have to continue to look at from year to year and make some tough decisions as we try to keep the budget balanced. So the other assumptions that I made on the revenue side, in this year we know the levy collections because we have our 4-year EP&O adopted. I'm adjusting state and federal revenues based on enrollment and inflation, and then adjusting other revenues for inflation. So again, very simple adjustments. I've built in a slightly higher assumption for my expenditures because as we know, our expenditures tend to outpace the state's IPD. So I've built a little bit in there on the expenditure side. It may not be perfect, but just trying to have a little bit of acknowledgement that our expenditures will probably be higher than just IPD. So this is what the general fund 4-year projection would look like. Our $800,000 draw on fund balance gets us closer to balanced for the next 2 years. Again, most of that is because of our EP&O levy increase. In this budget cycle, we're only getting half of that EP&O collection because it starts in 2027. And so then the next few years, we get the full amount of that. And so that's showing that what we projected in our levy work seems to be lining up still for those out years. And then in the 4th year, it goes back to negative. And that's the cycle that we tend to see pretty frequently. You run your levy, expenditures change over the 4 years, and then when it's a levy refresh, we do another evaluation of how bad have expenditures outpaced what we've been funded, and where do we want to go from there. So that's what this 4-year projection looks like. Is it appears that we would draw next year, we'd be close to balanced, assuming no changes or that my assumptions are accurate, and then we might in the year 4 have a draw on fund balance. The ASB budgeted a draw on fund balance for this budget cycle. They usually end up closer to actual because they also build some capacity. I have to show that 4 years. I wanted to show that it's getting to balanced. And so I can do that a number of ways. I just picked that revenues would increase by 6%, expenditures would only grow by 2%. And what that shows, the bottom line, you're showing that the draw on fund balance gets close to balanced. Again, in actuality, ASB has typically been balanced every year or close to it. So this is just me trying to solve the capacity, expenditure capacity that they build into their budget. Does that make sense?
And that's because the high school, they kind of watch, they know how much money they have and they're only spending up to.
They're good at spending their budget.
Yeah.
When they're building their budgets, we say, put some expenditure capacity because what if you sell more tickets and you have more money to spend and you want to support some things, like you want some capacity in your expenditures. The other thing we tell them is there's no value in growing your fund balance in the ASB. Like you're collecting fees from students. We want you to spend those monies on the students that are there that are paying those fees. And so They do a good job. They're pretty responsible, and they've done a good job managing their budgets. But for my 4-year cycle, I've got to kind of show that if I don't show that's corrected, then they end up with a negative fund balance. So I have to kind of make some assumptions that it'll be corrected. But debt service, again, principal and interest payments. So that's pretty straightforward. We know what our principal and interest payments are. And so that's a pretty easy 4-year cycle. Capital projects, if this year's capital projects, remember I said it was a lot of capacity. If we spent all of those dollars in 26, 27, we will have addressed a whole lot of things. And so I assumed then that in the out years, we would only spend the tech levy that we're collecting and maybe some impact fees that we might be collecting. We would kind of just spend what we get. And so I'm just showing at the bottom here, you see like, if we spend all these expenditure capacity in 2026, we would be drawing our fund balance by 8 million. And then I just said the next 3 years would be a balanced budget.
An Opstead project, that's in this previous budget, right?
It's in this previous budget. There will be costs that spill over because it won't be totally done by August 30th. And so there's capacity in there to finish some of those. There's some things at Opstead that will continue for next year. For example, we want to put a sign at the street, Opstead Elementary kind of a sign, because they never have had one. We haven't decided what that sign looks like. We've built it into the plans so that there's power out there for a light, but we haven't purchased or done the monument sign. So there's always some things in the next year as we kind of go through, and as it's working, there might be some changes that we have to do, or some of the landscaping dies and we've got to replace it. So there will be kind of ongoing kind of tweaks and as we close out that project. Transportation, again, is just, I assumed in this budget that you'll be approving that we're spending most of the fund balance to, again, try to replenish buses as quickly as possible. And so the out 3 years are just spending the money that we anticipate getting in depreciation from the state. And again, remember that the state cut this as well as a way to save money for their budget. And so we're getting less money per year to replace our buses. So our fleet will get a little bit older because we won't be able to replace them as quickly. But essentially a balanced budget in the out years. So that is the summary. Again, for the budget adoption, our recommendation would be to approve the budget. You'll take action later on in the agenda, and you'd be approving these appropriation amounts. And that's the end of our hearing, or our presentation. So I think we would now turn it to Ram to open up the budget hearing.
Well, so like you said, now it's open for budget hearing. Anyone who has any comments, thoughts, questions, this is the time to ask those questions. None? All right, we'll close the public hearing for the 26-27 fiscal year budget.
And if you guys have questions, we can take them now, or we could wait until the action item. Now might be better while it's fresh in your mind, but I'm flexible.
I don't have any questions. This is not the first, obviously, the first.
Yeah.
We've had multiple conversations and gone back and forth, and I feel all my questions have been answered. Thank you.
Yep, mine too.
Great.
Thank you so much. All right, moving on to public comment. We have not received anybody to speak in person, but we did receive one written comment, which will be attached to the board minutes. Okay. Moving on to the approval of consent agenda. And before we do that, we like to read the gifts to the district. There are 2 of them. The first one is from Wildcat to Mount Si High School from Wildcat Boosters Club Boys Tennis in an amount of $5,315.24 towards a boys tennis overnight team clinic at UW. The second donation is for Timber Ridge from Timber Ridge Elementary School PTSA, an amount of $10,000 for preschool playground and classroom supplies. We greatly appreciate these gifts to the district because they serve in a very important purpose. Said that, is there a motion for consent agenda, to approval of consent agenda?
So moved?
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. On to the next item, information and report items. We have a facility rental insurance requirements.
And we'd invite Mr. Stokes up. I asked him to share a little information as we talked about, as things get more expensive and there's more liability. It's been recommended that we change our practices. So Ryan
Yeah.
will review some of that.
Our insurance company had requested, they reviewed our coverage for liability and had requested that we increase our coverage for facility users and service contracts. This one is specific to the facility users, but we would have a similar policy or approach for our service contracts. And really this is in response to a number of things, just the increasing cost of doing business. I would say probably the litigious nature of our area and the liberal approach of juries to those litigious actions. And as we have talked about, insurances have had some pretty significant cost increases because they are covering those types of things. As we talked about, I think in July, a different insurance coverage that many districts are covered in saw a 50% increase in their insurance premiums this year that they were not expecting. For us, that would have been easily over $1 million. We just got our insurance renewal, and it was about 6% increase. So we want to continue to be a good partner with our insurance company, and I think it's a fair and appropriate thing to do to look at that because typically, even though a facility renter that comes in and has an accident, their insurance would be first responsible, but because it would be our facility, we could still have some liability to that. And so I think it makes sense to look at that again. The insurance agency initially recommended that we go from 1 million per occurrence to 2 million in the aggregate to 2 million and 5, and then with higher risk activities, 5 and 10. And so we started with that this summer and heard from a lot of our groups that those were hard amounts to obtain, which doesn't mean we shouldn't do it, but we wanted to listen to that. And so we pushed back and with our insurance agency, and they've agreed that it would be okay to change our approach a little bit. So what we are proposing is essentially for a basic facility use, we would keep our existing coverage levels. So, you know, if the orchestra group playing on the stage is just using the stage, it would be the same coverage. And then we've tried to make two other buckets. One would be what we're calling a medium risk activity, and that would be the 2-5 area. The insurance company had originally suggested that be all athletics. And then we heard things from like the junior football program that, you know, the junior associations, it's very hard to obtain that level of insurance. And so again, the level of injuries that occur at those smaller ages are not as drastic. And so what we're suggesting is high school aged activities and higher would be that medium risk. A good example of that, a lacrosse player passed away at Mercer Island this spring from an errant ball. And so there's things that we would say in most cases that's silly to have that type of coverage until you need it. And so I think that helps protect us a little bit. And then the high coverage amount really is, both of the medium and high would be kind of based on the application that we receive, and we would work with our insurance company on how they think we should be covering it. But we wanted to put there, you know, a high risk could be something like when you're renting the Performing Arts Center and you're having access to the fly and the catwalks where someone could fall, or where it's really hard to have good supervision in those spaces. Those could be pretty large accidents, and so that would be an example of a high risk situation. So most of our events don't use that type of equipment in the Performing Arts Center because it also requires we require them to hire staff to man a lot of that, and so I don't think that level would apply to too many groups.
So in spite of the fact that they suggested we go to the 2.5 for even the basic facilities, we decided, or we're deciding right now to go 1.2, keep those at 1.2. That's not what caused our insurance to go up.
No.
That was going to happen anyway.
Correct.
Okay.
What it might do is help in the future keep it from going higher.
Okay.
They would know that they have more coverage. I would say I've talked with our neighbors. Most of our neighbors have the 1.2 or less. They've also, some of them had said they've received requests to go higher and they're reviewing it. So this increase is probably on the leading edge, I would say. And so I don't, we
For
could.
the sports, the high school sports.
Yeah. But again, I think, we're seeing settlements be very high. And so I think it behooves us to be ahead of that game and try to protect our interests instead of doing it after the fact, because then it's too late.
I am wondering, when you say it is difficult to get that insurance, are we talking about, one, not being able to get that insurance, and two, or both, just a exorbitant cost, preventative cost for those policies?
I can't speak to. I don't know the right answer to that, because what I heard from them was that it was hard, and yes, it was a linear cost, and so a lot of those groups would have to pass that cost on to their users. Again, I don't know if that should be our consideration, but it is helpful to know. I think some groups said, they, based on the nature of their group, it may be hard to get some of that. To that end, I also learned this week that the 2.5 level, most groups, in order to get 5, would have to get an umbrella policy. Whereas if we did 2 million per occurrence and 4 million in the aggregate, a typical policy would be 2.4. So I'd actually was going to recommend that middle range be 2.4 to to not have to have those users purchase an umbrella policy on top of it. And our insurance agency agreed that would still be, that it's still making good progress. They said that would be fine. So I was going to make the suggestion that we revise that medium to a 2.4, just to make it easier for folks to get the coverage and a little cheaper.
How frequent are we running into situations where this would even apply?
Well, again, by limiting it to high school athletics, so we've already talked with the boosters and they're able to get it. It's a cost increase to them, but they preferred it to be a blanket than let's pick the sports that are higher risk and have to deal with a different coverage for each little event. So I think they were appreciative that we were trying to get it a little bit cheaper, because the 5.10 was challenging for them. We have lacrosse group. We have rugby and cricket groups that are high school aged. And so that's kind of what most of our facility renters are, that are, I would say, are medium risk. And then we would evaluate based on the activity. If a group brought in, a bunch of bounce houses or something for a festival, like that would be a higher risk or a medium or higher risk activity. And so we would assess those based on the type of use. And we probably do that in conjunction with our insurance company, because they're a good kind of sounding board for those things.
Why do the boosters need this coverage? Because
Well,
the
they
kids
sometimes,
are playing.
yeah, they sometimes have activities that they're sponsoring that the district doesn't sponsor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like an extra tennis tournament or something, or
Yeah, or when they
whatever.
go out of state for a tournament, or they,
Okay,
the cheer squad goes to nationals. Those are a lot of times booster-sponsored events and not school-sponsored events.
Okay. I meant to look up SciView, to see how we compared to SciViews and what they required people to have, because people are also playing sports on their fields. I don't know if you know.
True. I don't know. Again, I was trying to respond to the request of our insurance agency to start to adjust. So that's kind of where I was at, because I would say that our facilities are also different from SciView, which is mainly just a field.
Yeah.
We've got.
I'm thinking too, if people can't get the coverage that we require, then is SciView an option for them?
Yeah, I would assume that they have lower insurance requirements, right?
Okay.
So are you recommending officially to go to 2.4?
I would recommend to go 2.4. I didn't because I hadn't gone out to try to purchase them. So when I heard that back, I was like, oh, that makes sense. I checked with our insurance. They said, yeah, we'd be okay with 2.4, because then that extra umbrella policy, now they're carrying 2 policies in order to meet that, and that does add more cost. And so,
That feels reasonable.
and the other thing I like about it is it's baby stepping. We went in just kind of like, let's do it. And part of the reason why we initially over the summer told people we were going to the higher recommended amounts was generated by the barn rental by the FFA group. And the insurance was saying that's a higher risk activity and want us to get a higher amount. And they were able to obtain the insurance to meet that,
What were they? 2.5?
510.
5.10?
Because you had students there by themselves, potentially in an unsupervised situation. So they were able to get it, maybe because it was a pretty small group and small duration. It didn't seem like it was too expensive. So I had assumed that it was not terrible to get. But then once we kind of played that out to our other groups, we were hearing a lot of important considerations that I hadn't really thought of. And I thought it was important to reevaluate that and try to be a good partner with our community while also protecting our liability interests.
Yeah. Did you reach out to multiple partners to find out that information? Is there?
We had just sent out, because in the summertime everyone was getting ready to start doing their rental applications for the fall. So we let them know that it was changing. And as they talked with their insurance providers, they were then giving us information like, hey, we're having a hard time finding this. Can you, give us an exception? Can you do this? And so as we kind of heard the details, it was like, this is going to be a heavy lift, and I don't know if the cost, the benefit outweighs the cost. So let's see if we can reevaluate it and baby step in, see how it works.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but this is, essential to complying with the insurance companies because we have to protect ourselves. What I wanted to make sure is there is clarity in our policy so that there is no confusion or any bias type of scenarios that folks will feel. And that's what I would like to make sure that we have clarity on that.
We can definitely look at that. I think our policy has like a minimum amount, so I think when I looked at it, I don't think it needed a big change or we could, but I think the way it was written, it gave us some flexibility. I think by trying to give some examples of what a medium and a high risk would be, just so that the ones who we know are going to qualify, we can tell ahead of time, but still giving us the ability to evaluate based on the user, because it's hard to have a comprehensive list in every scenario. It would be really hard to create a policy that if you have these 3 things, it's medium risk. So we tried to give ourselves some ability to have some flexibility depending on the type of event.
And that's you deciding, right? You're the one. Okay, good.
And then the insurance company also, you have to partner with them to.
Yeah, I think if I have questions or want a second opinion, I can ask them, and they'll usually say how they would do it, or if they're okay with it. Like if I'm worried about it, I'll say, hey, I'm going to call this a medium. Are you guys okay with that? Just so that, at partnering, so that they're not surprised if something happens and, there is a thing. It's nice to have them have buy-in kind of at the beginning instead of a reaction at the end. And they're really responsive, so it doesn't slow down the rental application process. They're very, very responsive. So it's not like it takes us 3 weeks to make the determination and then all the rentals are way late.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thank you. Any other questions?
No, it makes sense to me.
Okay, and we'll adjust that to a 2.4 in the procedures.
As long as our insurance company is okay with it.
Yeah, they're good with it.
All right, moving on to board review and action items. The first one is 5.01, resolution number 903-2627, budget adoption. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution 903-2026-2027 budget adoption?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, Brian.
Thank you, Ryan.
Budget has
Thank
been
you.
adopted. Next item on the agenda is 5.02, Policy 5401, Sick Leave, first reading. Any comments?
No, I have just one question. If the district is also planning to adopt the procedure that goes with it.
Yes, we would follow up with a procedure that supported the policy, correct?
Yes.
Great.
Any further discussion?
Well, it seems like there's not really any room for.
Okay. I'm just making
Any
sure.
changes, right? This is
The
straight
law
from,
changes and the state said.
straight
and
from
Changes.
the
wrote it down.
RCW.
Okay.
There's quite a few more coming, right,
Yes.
Joan?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a whole bunch, like 20 or 30 of them
Some of
somewhere.
them we have wiggle room.
Yeah.
This one,
All right, so the policy moves to a consent agenda. Thank you so much. And the next item is future meeting dates. We have our district kickoff on the 20th, coming up soon. And our first day of classes is on 26th. And for preschool and kindergarten is on 31st. And Labor Day is on September 7th. And our next board meeting is on September 10th.
August 17th, blast.
August, yes, Monday we do have blast, that's correct.
8, 7:30?
I think it starts at 7:30, doesn't it? Does anyone have that blast start time? on Tuesday?
Right.
No.
We can get that to you too.
I think I have it. I just wanted to make sure.
Okay. With that, is there anything else for the good of the order?
Just excited about the first day of school.
Well, the one thing that I want to share is this is the last board meeting at the library,
Yeah.
That's right.
and the next board meeting will be at the district office.
Fingers crossed that the technology is,
Oh, Tyler, we have full faith in that.
the technology shows
Tyler's
up
got
and it's
it.
installed. But,
Always subject to.
Technology working, yes.
Yeah.
we did have the desks and the different things were delivered, correct? But the technology has not been delivered yet.
Oh, it hasn't been, huh?
Is that
Okay.
right, Tyler?
It's been delivered, getting installed.
Okay.
Okay, we have.
Well,
Yeah.
Thursday and Friday were set aside for that. That's right.
Awesome.
Didn't happen today.
Before we are back, a band will be performing in the parade
Oh.
for Snow Quality Days. I still want to call it Railroad Days, even after all this time. Yeah, Side Snow Quality Days. So that'll be, I think, the first performance of the year. That's kind of cool.
Awesome. Okay. Anything else? Okay, so with that, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.